Hello everyone. Tonight, we begin with a question about life after love after loss, and what the world expects of a woman who still breathes after her husband's last did not. What happens when a widow in a medieval town dares to keep living, dares to speak again, to earn again, maybe, just maybe, to love again? Join us to explore this dramatic and surprising story now. You're not yet in the story. Not quite. First picture, a town not too large, not too small, with narrow, timber-framed houses leaning toward each other like gossiping old women. The air smells faintly of yeast and wood smoke, and the market square hums with the clatter of carts and children's laughter. And now, place yourself in that scene, but silent. Your shoes are soft-soled. Your dress is dark. Your veil is heavier than it looks. Your husband has died. You might not make it through this voyage awake, but then again, perhaps that's the point. Before you snuggle into your blanket, hit like on the video and comment where you're watching from and what time it is. There, it's so fun to know who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bells toll low and slow 7 times. You count each one through the veil that clings damp against your cheek. The grave is shallow, dug by the town's sexton, who muttered more about his aching back than the soul now buried beneath the frosted soil. You stand perfectly still, surrounded but alone, and feel the weight of 1,000 eyes that dare not meet yours too directly. They say a widow's gaze carries sorrow or secrets. A magpie hops nearby. Some say that's a bad omen, but you've never had time for omens. Not when there's rent due and bread to bake and a small workshop that must either reopen or die with your husband. You remember him, his voice, the way he scraped his boots twice before entering the sound of his laughter when ale warmed his chest. The good moments flash fast. The bad ones linger a little longer. But memory is never a faithful scribe. Behind you, the priest mumbles his final Latin lines. Beside you, your neighbor, the older widow Alice, stands like a pillar of wool and bone, already whispering advice before the priest's last amen. Don't sell the lathe too quick. Wait to see who asks. You nod once. Her hand squeezes yours once. And then she is gone, vanishing into the village fog like a ghost from your own future. Imagine this now, the moment you step back into your home and everything smells like the same stew and the same wood polish, but feels like a different universe. That's the first real grief. Not the grave, the absence, the silence that has teeth. You slip off your shoes and sit beside the fireplace, staring at the blacksmith's tools he left behind. You'll have to sell some of them. Maybe not the hammer. That one still carries his thumbprint in rust. The days after a burial feel hollow, but they are anything but idle. There's mourning to perform, debts to count, and town laws to navigate. Did you know, in many 13th century English towns, a widow had only 40 days to remain in her husband's home unless she had inherited tenancy herself. After that, the Lord could eject her or take her under his protection. And we both know what that word sometimes meant. You hang your mourning veil near the door. It is coarse wool dyed black, though after the first month you're allowed to wear gray. People measure your virtue by your hemline. It is now that the whispers begin. They say she had land in her name. She was always too clever with numbers. Didn't she smile a bit too quickly after the funeral? You're not surprised. Widowhood is not just a social identity. It's a test. In some corners of Europe, particularly among the merchant class, a widow could inherit property, manage apprentices, even petition town council. But power always draws scrutiny. And a woman alone is never simply alone. She's suspect. You walk to the well. The next morning, veil pinned tight. Your basket holds stale crusts to toss to the chickens you've not yet decided to keep or kill. Beside the well is young Koa, the apprentice who once fetched iron rods for your husband. He fiddles with a frayed rope and avoids your eyes. "Morning," he says softly. "Is it?" He shrugs. "He taught me to shape horseshoes." You nod. That's all that needs saying. Have you ever held a bucket of water and watched your reflection shift as the surface trembles? That's what grief feels like. A warped mirror of your own past, familiar but no longer true. A week passes. You light candles for your husband's soul. You donate bread to the poor. You say the right things to the parish priest. But already you feel the hunger in your bones, not just for food or warmth, but for clarity. What comes next? What do you do when you're no longer someone's wife, but not yet someone else? Historian Rosalind McKitterick once said that widows were both socially vulnerable and legally empowered, a contradiction with teeth. And historians still argue whether medieval women truly used this window of widowhood for autonomy, or whether it was just an illusion dressed up in lace. You can feel both truths scraping against each other as you step into the workshop. The morning light cuts across the wooden table. Dust motes dance. The lathe sits still waiting. You place your hand on it gently, as if testing a pulse. "Let's see if we can keep you spinning," you whisper. Not for sentiment, not for memory, for survival. Your fingers trace the edge of the lathe worn smooth by years of your husband's work and your quiet watching. He never taught you outright, but you paid attention, didn't you? Every spin, every pause, every time he cursed under his breath. When the chisel bit too deep, you were never just a wife. You were a mirror to the craft. Now, with no one else to do it, you must become the hands behind the wheel. Outside, the morning fog has begun to lift, but inside your home, shadows still cling to the corners. You wear black, not just for mourning, but because the town expects it. Wool dyed dark and heavy, a signal to the world. Do not flirt, do not ask, do not assume. In some towns, this mourning veil must stay on for a year. In others, even longer. And though the law may not enforce it, society certainly will. Imagine wrapping that veil around your face each morning. It's not just fabric, it's armor, but also a prison. It hides your grief, yes, but it hides you too. At market, people look at you differently now. Some with pity, others with suspicion, a few with interest. Not the warm, friendly kind, but the calculating kind. The kind that wonders what you now own, what you might sell, who you might become. "Alone are you?" asks a butcher as he wraps a joint of meat. He offers it cheaper than usual, but you know better. Everything has its price, and meat in medieval towns is almost always tied to some hidden cost. You thank him and walk away, letting your silence speak. By the well, a child stares at you. "Mama says you'll marry again soon," she blurts. You raise a brow. "Does she?" She says all widows do, 'cause no one can survive alone. Not here. You crouch to her level veil, fluttering slightly. "Well," you murmur, "some of us just haven't been asked nicely yet." She giggles, a rare sound. You allow yourself a smile, but only a small one. Back at home, you begin inventory. The spinning wheel's still good. The chest of linens untouched. 3 pairs of shoes too many now, perhaps. You may need to sell one. Or all. The rent will come due soon. In many towns across England and France, widows could keep their husband's workshop, but only if they continued the trade. In some places, that meant remarrying within the guild. In others, it meant bribing a clerk. Either way, survival was never a right. It was a negotiation. You start cleaning the tools. Later, Alice visits her face, lined her hands stained with ash from her own hearth. "Veil suits you," she says, setting down a bundle of herbs. "Doesn't suit my mood." She chuckles. "It's not supposed to." You sip the bitter tea she brews. It scalds your tongue, but warms your chest. "Widowhood is a test," she says quietly. "People will see what you're made of now. They'll measure it." You nod. "What if I don't pass?" "Then they'll try to marry you off, quickly, before you learn how to want anything else." She leaves you with that thought and the herbs. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself sitting by that hearth. The fire crackles low. The smell of smoke clings to your dress. Somewhere, a rooster crows late. It's easy to forget what time it is when each day blends into the next. You hum a song you haven't heard in years. Not for your husband, but for yourself. A melody your mother used to sing when braiding your hair. It reminds you of who you were before the black veil, before you became the widow, because that's what they call you now, even when they try not to. Widow. Like it's your new first name. The church, of course, has plenty to say about your next steps. Remarriage is permitted, even encouraged, but only after the proper mourning. And only if the new union is chaste and honorable, whatever that means in a world where priests often turn a blind eye to noblemen's indiscretions but scold widows for a glance too long. In some places, canon law insists that widows wait 1 year before remarrying. In others, just 6 months. Historians still argue whether these rules were enforced evenly or just wielded as tools to keep certain women obedient. What isn't debated is the pressure from family, from neighbors, from priests, even from yourself. There's a loneliness that creeps in like cold under the door. You catch yourself reaching for the other side of the bed. You find yourself speaking aloud during supper. You hold on to a worn tunic just for the smell. Koa visits again nervously, holding a wrapped bundle. "Your husband promised me this tool before he passed." You unwrap it, a chisel, old but well kept. You hand it to him slowly. "Then take it, use it well." He hesitates. "If you ever need help with the shop," you nod. "You might, but not yet. Not until you decide what help means." He leaves. You watch him go. A widow in 14th century Ghent might inherit the full inventory of her husband's loom. One in Florence might be entitled to his accounts if she could read them. In York, the butcher's widow could sometimes take over the stall, but only under the watchful eye of guild stewards. Across Europe, widows were both empowered and trapped, given keys, then followed room to room. You lie awake that night, hand under your cheek, thinking, maybe the veil isn't just mourning. Maybe it's camouflage. And so the next morning, you open the shutters wide. You bake bread. You sweep the step. You polish the sign above your shop door. It reads M. Carter Ironworks. You let it stay. But you take a piece of chalk and draw a small new mark beneath it, a curled letter, your initial. A woman's claim, small but stubborn. A whisper that you are still here. The morning sun creeps in through the open shutters, catching the chalk mark you left yesterday. A quiet signature, half defiant, half tender. You hadn't planned to write it. Your hand moved before your mind did. But now, as you stand in the doorway of the workshop with your veil pulled halfway back, you feel its presence like a second heartbeat. You are not just a continuation of his trade. You are becoming something of your own. The forge has not been lit in weeks. Not since the bells tolled. Not since your neighbors stopped knocking. But the dust has begun to settle, and so have you. You tie your hair back with the same ribbon you wore when you were 15, faded, knotted, but still strong. The same could be said of you. The day begins with small steps. You polish the iron tongs. You test the bellows. You hang herbs to dry near the hearth rosemary, thyme, and mint. Not because they're needed, but because the scent makes you feel like the walls are listening kindly again. That's when it begins. First, it's old Marta, whose goat pen door has lost a hinge. She offers 2 loaves of rye and a pot of honey in exchange for the repair. Then, by late morning, it's Denise the brewer, whose barrel hoops need tightening. Coin this time, honest and folded discreetly into your palm. You make no grand announcements, no signs that say, "Widow open for business." But word spreads faster than you expect. The forge breathes again, the hammer strikes again, and your name is whispered, not with pity, but with curiosity. Now take a moment to imagine your hands rougher than before, smeared with soot stronger. Feel the weight of the hammer, not symbolic, just heavy, practical, real. That's when you remember something he used to say, your late husband. Steel don't care who swings it. You'd laugh then, but now you see it wasn't a joke. It was permission. The town square feels different today. As you walk through it, buying oil and salt, the glances are softer. Still curious, still watching, but no longer piercing. Not entirely. Some see a widow returning to life. Others see a woman who dares not to disappear. You stop at the baker's, where young Lettuce, barely married a year, leans in to whisper, "My mother says it's dangerous. You working like this." You raise an eyebrow. Dangerous to whom? She doesn't answer. Just stares at your hands. In medieval towns, reputation is both currency and curse. For widows especially. A woman alone with tools that could mean independence, or sorcery, or seduction, depending on who tells the tale. Some towns had laws forbidding women from running certain businesses unless under a male guardian. Others, like in the Low Countries, were more lenient, especially with widows. The line between legality and rumor was thin and shifting. Historians still argue whether these widows truly found freedom, or merely a more elegant cage. By late afternoon, you return home with coins tucked beneath your sash and a warm roll hidden in your pocket. The fire is lit again, not large, just enough. And beside it, a small pile of fabric and thread awaits. Sewing, mending, not for trade, but for solace. You pull the thread through a tear in your old shawl, humming a tune again softly this time. But as you work, a knock comes at the door. It's not Koa, not Alice. It's the priest, Father Harwin, red-faced and wary of silence. He smells of candle wax and incense, and always looks as if he swallowed an opinion he regrets. "My child," he begins, "some in the parish are concerned." You smile, just slightly. "Are they?" He clears his throat. "About your activity. Business, I mean." So soon after morning, you let him finish his sentence, then pour tea-hot bitter, undiluted. He doesn't sip. "I prayed you say softly for clarity." He frowns. "Of course, but prayer is not action." You raise an eyebrow. "In my experience, it is." He leaves 10 minutes later, confused and empty-handed. Once the door closes, you exhale, long and slow. You've learned something vital today. They will knock. They will question. They will warn. But they cannot make you disappear. There's a gathering that night. Not public, not formal. Just a few widows. You didn't organize it, but you were invited. That means something. You enter Alice's home and find 6 women seated around a worn table. Bread, cheese, a shared candle, quiet laughter. You sit between Ruth, who sells combs and ribbons, and old Maud, who brews ale in clay pots too fragile for men to carry. Each of them has a story. A past husband, a second chance, a refusal, a scandal, a debt, a rumor, a victory. Together, they are the Widows' Guild, not in name, not in charter, but in soul. They trade more than goods. They trade warnings One speaks of a man who offers loans in exchange for kisses. Another warns of a landlord who inspects more than roof beams. They give you a spindle, a token, not a gift, a wager. You've earned your seat, says Maud. Spin what's yours, not what they left behind. You nod. You will. That night, you sleep deeper than you have since the bells. No ghost in the bed beside you, just silence, and the certainty that tomorrow you rise again. The spindle they gave you rests beside your bed, now slender, carved old. But it holds weight not from its wood, but from its meaning. You turn it over in your fingers before dawn, tracing the whorls and nicks left by hands long gone. Widows pass things like this down. Not jewels, not poems, but tools. Quiet things that speak only when held. You wake early. The streets are still damp with dew, and the baker hasn't opened yet. It's in these pale hours that your body remembers what it was like to be married when someone beside you breathed a rhythm you knew too well. You blink the memory away. Pull your shawl close and step into the world again. Today, you notice how the world steps differently around you. A neighbor nods no longer with pity, but respect. Two boys pause their game and ask if you'll hammer their broken cartwheel. And then as the forge warms to life, a knock comes, not at your front door, but the side. The workshop door, the one usually for apprentices. When you open it, a man stands there. His cloak is too fine for a tradesman, and his boots are too clean for honest labor. His smile is measured, the kind that has seen coins change hands more often than candles burn down. Widow Carter. Is it? You nod. I'm told your work is reliable. I have need of hinges, strong ones, for a gate that matters. You let the silence stretch. A hinge is never just a hinge, and a gate that matters likely guards something valuable or dangerous. Still, business is business. You agree. He leaves a pouch of coin heavier than needed. You turn back into the shop, heart ticking a little faster. You think, am I foolish? Am I lucky? You don't know yet. You rarely do until the price is already paid. But you mark the day, the moment, the man. You'll remember him. You've learned to. Imagine your hands again wrapping a strip of leather around the handle of a hammer. The weight is familiar now. You've begun to judge metal by its scent. Iron smells like heat, like rain on blood. Brass is brighter, lighter. Tin, useless but kind. You keep the forge hot all morning, and the work pours from you. Not just function, but form. You shape corners with care, smooth ridges with pride. And as the town wakes, word travels. The Widow Carter's shop is not just surviving, it's growing. At the well, two women whisper. She's brazen, says one. She's breathing, says the other. You let that pass. Let it soak in like sun on stone, because soon enough, you'll need that strength. That evening, Koa returns. He carries a bundle, not tools, but a letter. He holds it out like it's smoldering. You open it cautious. It's from your late husband's cousin. A man who once eyed your wedding dress with more hunger than joy. He writes with formality, but the meaning is plain. He wants the workshop. He believes he has claim. Blood over marriage, he insists, and he will take it peacefully if permitted. Your stomach knots, not from fear, but from memory. You recall his voice from years ago after your wedding feast. A whisper near your ear. You'll tire of him. There are better men in the family. You didn't answer then. You will now. You go to Alice that night. The widows gather again. This time, there's a ledger. Ink. A list of names. These women don't just bake and mend and stitch. They know the scribe at the chapel, the clerk at the manor house, the reeve who turns a blind eye for silver or bread. You realize something important. Widowhood is not a weakness. It is a network, a spider's web of knowledge. Quiet, patient, and stronger than it looks. Write your name, says Maud, next to your property line, in ink. And you do. Now pause just for a moment and breathe. Feel that ink dry under your thumb. Imagine the scratch of quill on parchment. Think about what it means to claim something not as a wife, but as yourself. That night, you lay awake and stare at the ceiling. You don't feel powerful. You feel awake, and that's more than enough. But power never rises unnoticed. 3 days later, he returns. Not Koa, not the fine-booted stranger, but the cousin, in person. With 2 men behind him, he smiles. The same smile. That same old rust in his eyes. I was hoping we could speak. You step outside, veil wrapped tight again. Not for mourning, but for war. I have nothing to say, you reply. That's unwise, he says softly. You may find the law isn't on your side. You step closer. I may find you aren't on yours. He hesitates. Just enough. Because behind you the forge glows. Because to your right, Koa now stands with a hammer. Because the alley hums with watching eyes. He leaves, not quickly, but empty-handed. Historians still debate how often widows in medieval towns truly protected their property through community. Some say such alliances were rare and informal. Others argue they were essential hidden veins of female resistance beneath the skin of patriarchal order. Either way, tonight it worked. You return inside. Sit by the fire. Your hands tremble. You let them. Even steel must cool before it can hold. And that night when you sleep, the dream is simple. You are walking through the town. No veil, no ring, no questions, only footsteps. And your name, just your name. By morning, word has spread. The cousin with clean shoes and dirty intentions has left town quietly, bitterly, and with his pride leaking behind him like an untied bundle of grain. You don't smile when you hear it. Not exactly. But your shoulders lower just a little. And when you stretch your arms near the fire, the joints pop not from fear, but from effort, from real work. You never set out to fight. But sometimes, simply staying is resistance enough. And now you stay. The forge is busier. Not loud. No, you still keep a kind of hush in your home, but steady. 3 new customers today. A wheelwright with a snapped spoke. A midwife with a rusted clasp, and a shepherdess needing hinges for a lamb gate. Each one leaves you coin or bread, and more importantly, leaves you stories. I saw the reeve fumble his papers when he heard you wrote your name, says the midwife, grinning. Told him I'd bring you ink next time. You laugh, a real one. It feels strange in your throat. That's generous. Not generous. Grateful. But success in this town is never a straight road. It's more like a winding path through brambles and briars where every step forward might catch your hem. Especially for a widow. Because now, you're no longer just the woman who survived. You're the one who chose not to marry again. And that apparently is the most dangerous thing of all. Late one afternoon, as you sweep ashes from the hearth, Alice arrives with a look you know too well. It's the one you wore at your husband's funeral. She sits slowly. Her hand trembles slightly around the cup you hand her. He's asked me, she says. The merchant. The one with the salted fish and the fine coat. You nod, you know the one. Everyone does. He says I'll be safer. More secure. That I can stop worrying about the roof. You nod again, quietly. And I want to say no, but, that word hangs between you, like a bell that won't stop ringing. You reach across the table and touch her wrist gently. Then don't say no. She blinks. Say not yet. Say not until you offer me more than safety. Say, I have questions. She exhales like a dam breaking. I'm so tired. You understand, truly, because safety is tempting, especially when you've known danger and loneliness and cold. In medieval towns, widows were courted not with roses, but with promises of protection, of income, of restored reputation. and always the unspoken trade, your name for theirs. Your independence trimmed and hemmed, some accepted gladly, some with resignation, and some like Elise stood in the doorway for a long time not moving. Historians still argue whether widows who remarried did so out of choice or necessity. But one thing is clear, society preferred them married because a woman alone is unpredictable. Imagine now that you are offered that same promise. A man with kind eyes, a merchant, not a warrior. He speaks gently. He touches nothing until invited, and still you hesitate because you've tasted your own power. It's not sweet, it's not soft, but it's yours. So you ask him questions he doesn't expect. Will you let me keep the forge? Will you sign your name beside mine? Will you let my daughter inherit what I build? And he hesitates, and you understand everything. That night, as the stars come out and the hearth dies down, you sit by your spindle and pull thread with slow hands. Lonnie, one of the younger widows, visits and brings embroidery. She has stitched a scene of a woman at a forge, her veil half lifted. It's not perfect, but it's close. You laugh gently. She looks like me. She is you, Lonnie says, or she will be. You pin the cloth beside your door. A banner, perhaps, or a warning. The next day, you receive a visit from a man of a different kind. A priest again, but not the same one. This one is young, sincere, unsure. I heard you counsel women, he says, clutching his rosary too tightly. I listen, you say. Sometimes I answer. He clears his throat. They say you delay marriages, encourage hesitation. You look at him long. I encourage women to ask what they'll become after the wedding. He blinks. But Scripture says, widows may marry again, or stay as they are. He opens his mouth, then closes it. I hadn't thought of that. You nod. You should. He leaves humbled, not angry. That's rarer than coin. Now let's imagine for a moment that you're back at the well. The same child from weeks ago stands nearby, older by a breath. She looks at you and says, Mama says you're scary. You crouch again. And what do you say? I think you're tall. You laugh. Good. Stay small for now. It's easier to see the truth. She doesn't understand. She doesn't need to. Yet, that night, as the moon rises and your bones begin to ache with quiet satisfaction, you wrap yourself in your shawl, the same one you mended weeks ago. You touch the spindle beside your bed, and then your fingers move slowly to the edge of the veil, and for the first time, you take it off. No ceremony, no announcement, just the sound of breath, your own. The veil rests beside the spindle. Tomorrow it may hang on the wall, or it may return to your shoulders. But tonight, you sleep barefaced, and the wind outside passing by your window sounds almost like applause. You wake to birdsong instead of bells. The veil remains on the chair. You brush your hair with slow, deliberate strokes, tying it back with a thin leather cord instead of covering it. The morning sun warms your face through the shutters, and for once you don't feel the need to shrink from it. You step into the street without mourning cloth, and that in a medieval town is its own kind of declaration. People notice, they always do, but today, the looks aren't sharpened with as much surprise. Some nod in acknowledgement. A few still glance away quickly as if embarrassed by your defiance. But a few, only a few, look at you and smile. The kind of smile that says, we see you. We might not say it, but we understand. By noon you find yourself standing inside the church. Not for confession, not for mass, but for answers. The stone walls hold centuries of breath. Candles flicker in iron holders. The scent of old wax and myrrh coats the air like a blanket you can't quite shake off. You sit near the back where the shadows are longer and think not of sins, but of silence. That's when she joins you. Not a priest, not a saint, a woman in gray. Her name is Ilda. You've seen her before, but never spoken. They say she was married twice, once to a man who died in war, and once to a man who lived too long. Now she lives alone, near the river, and paints icons for the chapel. She speaks without turning her head. You're not the first. You glance over. First what? First to think the veil was a door you couldn't close again. You study her hands stained with pigment and calloused. What happened when you closed it? I opened a window instead. You sit together in silence. Just the sound of wind brushing the stone archway. She leaves you a ribbon as she rises. Not black, not gray. A muted red, the color of blood in sunlight. Later, you tie it around your spindle, not for vanity, for remembrance. In medieval towns, women like Ilda were often seen as strange. Not witches, not quite, but not entirely trustworthy. Artists, healers, those who walked on the edge of tradition. In some towns, such women were feared. In others, they were needed. Historians still debate how much agency these so-called wise widows truly held, whether they shaped their own lives or simply became shadows of male legacy. But you sense it now. There's something between the two. A quiet freedom that doesn't need permission to exist. You return to the forge that evening and find someone waiting. A man, not the merchant, not the cousin, someone new. His cloak is dusty, his beard half-grown, his hands blistered in a way that speaks of hard road travel. Are you Widow Carter? You nod. I heard you mend things. That true. You glance at the bundle he carries, iron hinges, bent tools, a horseshoe with a crack. I mend what needs mending, you say. He smiles. Not with charm, with relief. I was told you're fair. You take the bundle. That costs extra. He laughs a real laugh, low and honest. And for a flicker of a second, you wonder, not about him, about yourself. Could you, would you, remarry? But the thought drifts away like steam above the forge. Because this isn't about wanting a man, it's about wanting yourself. He thanks you and leaves. No flirtation, no promises. Just the echo of footsteps. You're grateful. The veil may be off, but your heart is still learning how to walk again. That night you join the widow's circle again. Fewer candles, more smiles. Alice arrives with a strange glint in her eye. Well, you ask. He asked. Again, she says. This time he offered land. A real piece. Not a promise. And I told him I'd think on it. You nod. That's enough for now. She raises her cup to thinking on it. The others laugh and clink mugs. Now picture the workshop quiet and warm after they've all gone. You light a small oil lamp and sit beside the forge. Not to work, just to be still. And in that silence, you find something deeper than survival. You find agency, not loud, not violent, just a steady pulsing truth. You are not waiting anymore. In one corner of the shop, the chalk mark you left days ago still remains beneath your husband's name. This time you don't add to it. You erase it and write a new one, bigger, bolder. Your name, not beneath his, beside it. It's not defiance, it's history, written not in stone, but in soot and will. The dawn light paints the edge of your work table gold. You sit with your spindle in your lap and the red ribbon from Ilda tied firm around its center. You twist the thread slowly, not for sale, not even for use, just for rhythm. The motion calms you more than prayer ever has. You hum while you work. Not a hymn, not a morning song, but something soft and wordless that drifts like smoke. Today, you will visit the weaving house. It's tucked near the edge of the town, past the Cooper's Lane and the crooked tree where children play in spring. You haven't walked there in years, not since before your wedding, when you bought a blue shawl that now lies folded under a chest. But you remember the women who gathered there, spindles spinning looms, thudding stories, whispered between threads. And now, drawn by some quiet current, you return. The weaving house is small, but alive. Thread hangs like vines from the rafters. The scent of lanolin and wood oil fills the space. You step over the threshold and are met with a pause, then recognition. "It's her," someone whispers. Another voice, older, warmer, chimes in, no longer in black. You're greeted by Lonnie, a widow you've seen at Alice's table, though you've never spoken more than pleasantries. She smiles, adjusting the cord of her apron. "Come to weave." You glance at the loom, maybe to listen. Lonnie nods. "Then you've come for the right part." You take a seat near the window. The others keep working, women of different ages, some young and unmarried, others with silver hair wrapped in tight buns, all of them spinning something. Wool, linen, secrets. Soon the stories begin. One speaks of a widow in Bruges who embroidered her husband's trade seal into every blanket she sold even after his death. Another recalls a woman from Chartres who kept her veil on for 15 years, not from mourning, but as protection against suitors who thought her wealth a welcome mat. Someone chuckles. They say she died with it still pinned under her chin. Her ghost wears it still, warding off the greedy. You laugh with them. For the first time, you realize this room is more than labor. It's memory made tactile, and in a corner, a girl no older than 15 works with careful fingers. She doesn't speak, but she listens like a sponge in the rain. You catch her watching you more than once. Her stitches tremble slightly. You remember what that felt like. Lonnie notices. Her name is Brita. She's new. You nod. She'll be steady before winter. Lonnie smiles. So will we all. Later you rise, thank them, and leave behind a small roll of copper wire as payment. Not required, but appreciated. Outside, the wind has changed direction. You can feel it on your skin. Back home, you notice things you hadn't before. The way the hearthstone is cracked, slightly along the edge. How the corner shelf leans inward. Things you might fix, not because they must be fixed, but because you can. That evening, you receive a visitor. Not a man this time, a girl, Brita. She stands at your door with wide eyes and red knuckles. I wanted to ask, do you teach? You blink. Teach. You mend tools. I saw. I want to know how. I want to learn. You hesitate. Not because you don't want to, because no one's ever asked before. Yes, you say, and her face lights up like dawn. Teaching a girl to use iron is not done in this town, not often. But widows bend rules as easily as fire over flame. You begin with the hammer, the weight of it in her hand. You show her how to hold it, not tight, not loose. Like a promise. You say, the metal doesn't respond to anger, only to rhythm. She repeats it, quietly, and the hammer falls true. Later that week, the priest stops by. The younger one, Harwin's replacement. He's carrying a ledger and trying to look authoritative. He fails. We've received a concern. You sigh. Do tell. He glances at his paper. You're instructing a girl in forge work. You fold your arms. I'm instructing a person in self-reliance. He shifts. It's not customary. You tilt your head. Neither is resurrection, but I hear it happens. He doesn't argue further, just leaves. Rita watches from the window. You weren't afraid, she says. I was, you answer. But fear passes. The work remains. Historians still argue whether medieval widows truly mentored younger women, or whether such stories are modern embellishments. The records are few, scattered, stitched between wills and fines and property claims. But oral tradition, that holds stronger threads, like the ones you now weave into Brita's hands. A week later, she burns her palm on a forged nail. Not deep, but enough. She winces, tears well. You take her hand gently, place it in a bowl of cool water, and say nothing, because sometimes pain is the tuition and healing the lesson. She returns the next day, and the day after that, you write a new mark on your ledger, apprentice. It feels stranger than widow, and much more alive. One night, while sweeping ashes, you catch sight of your own reflection in the window. No veil, no shawl, just a face, strong in the jaw, tired around the eyes, but clear. Yours. entirely yours. And outside, the stars appear one by one, like stitches in the sky. You whisper into the dark, "I am not waiting anymore." And the wind, soft and sure, replies, "We know, the seasons are changing." You can feel it in the bones of the town. Crisper air, in the morning longer shadows near dusk, the smell of apples left soft and sweet on the roadside. Autumn in a medieval town is more than a shift in weather, it's a reckoning. The harvest is tallied, the debts are counted, and the rumors, as always, grow bolder. Because now they whisper, not about when you'll remarry, but why you haven't. You hear it in the bakery queue. Two women behind you speaking just low enough to pretend you can't hear. She keeps a girl apprentice now. They say she works through the night. And have you seen the way she speaks to the reeve? As if confidence were scandal. As if freedom smelled of sulfur. You don't flinch. You buy your bread and walk back through the square, head held higher than the smoke from the chimney pots. But when you return home, the silence presses in a little heavier. You sit by the fire. Brita stokes the coals. You listen to her hum a melody she picked up from the weaving house. Her hands are blistered, but proud. "Do they bother you?" she asks softly. You look at her. Who? Them. The way they talk. You answer honestly. Yes. She nods, then adds, "Do you care?" You tilt your head. Some days, less than others. At night, you dream again not of your late husband, not of the forge, but of the day you first wore the veil. The weight of it, the way it wrapped your head and throat like a question you weren't allowed to ask. When you wake, you reach out in the dark until your fingers brush the red ribbon around the spindle. It steadies you. You decide it's time. You write a letter, not to a man, not to a suitor, to the guild steward. You request formal recognition of your business. A declaration that the forge, your forge, is active, compliant, and female-run. No woman has asked this year, perhaps not even in the past 5. You seal it with wax and a pressed coin. Then send Brita running with it, face flushed from pride and cold wind. By afternoon, the reply arrives. They'll visit. They want to see the books, the tools, the apprentice. You clean everything. You polish the sign again. You make sure your name is etched into the ledgers by hand. The day of the visit arrives with cold gray clouds and a quiet tension. You wear your hair braided back with a dark green shawl clasped high on your shoulders. Not mourning, not defiance, just strength dressed in wool. 3 men enter the forge. The first a scribe with an ink-stained collar. The second, the steward, older, careful, always calculating. And the third, a silent one. A younger man with watchful eyes, and the kind of silence that holds judgments not yet spoken. They examine your books, your tools, Brita's notes. They ask questions. You answer all. You're calm. You're clear. You let them see your work. Your order slips your melted joints and finished hinges. Then the steward steps closer. You were married to Matthew Carter. You nod. You took over his trade. I built on it. He looks up. Why haven't you remarried? You pause, and then answer, because I'm not done being myself. Silence. Then slowly he closes the book. We'll enter it formally, he says. You're listed now as Widow Carter, head of Forge number 12. You feel something loosen in your ribs. Not relief truth. After they leave, Brita throws her arms around you. We did it. You smile. You let her spin in the ash-dusted air. You say, we started it. That night, the widow's circle meets again. Alice brings honey cakes. Lonnie brings old cloth for cleaning blades. Someone brings a bottle of plum wine, smuggled probably. No one asks. You sit together, fire low hands wrapped around warm mugs. I've been asked again, says Alice, half laughing. This time by the steward's cousin. Will you, someone asks? She shrugs. Maybe, but I'll ask the questions this time. They all raise a toast to questions. Now picture the forge again. The way it glows red at dusk, not just from heat, but from heart. Brita works beside you now, sure-footed. She speaks to customers. She calls you mistress only when teasing. She has learned the balance between reverence and laughter. She is not yours, but she is becoming. Just like you, the townsfolk begin to shift their tone. They still whisper, but now they come too. They bring tools, requests, thanks, even praise. And one day, unbelievably, a request from the scribe's own sister. She wants you to mend a broken clasp on a mourning brooch. You open the case and recognize it instantly. It belonged to the woman who used to cross the street when you approached. You say nothing. You mend it anyway, with care, because you are not here to punish. You are here to persist. And one evening, just as you close up, someone knocks. Not Brita, not Alice, not the steward. A woman, face-lined, eyes soft. She doesn't speak right away, just holds out a bundle. You open it. Inside is a veil, worn, folded, clean. She says, "I don't need it anymore. I thought you'd know what to do." You take it and tuck it into the chest, not to hide, but to remember. That night, you sit by the window and look out over the town. The rooftops glisten under the faint stars. The forge cools behind you, warm and humming. You think you were married, then buried, then reborn, not loudly, not with fanfare, but in soot and thread and small stubborn steps. And tomorrow, when you open your door, you will step forward again, not as someone's, as yourself. The cold deepens. Stone walls seem to exhale frost, and your breath curls visibly as you stir the ashes each morning. Still, the forge remains lit. The warmth within your workshop now feels hard-earned, like a fire passed from hand to hand through wind and time. Winter is the season for remembering and forgetting. Many townsfolk spend their nights indoors telling stories by firelight. Most of them revolve around saints' beasts or tragedies long since exaggerated. But sometimes now, they speak of a widow who runs her own forge, a girl who works with her hands, a group of women who seem somehow unafraid. Your name is no longer a curiosity. It's a fact, stated plainly in ledgers, whispered with a kind of resigned awe. And yet the cold still tests you. One morning, you find Brita sitting stiffly at the anvil, her eyes distant. You ask what happened. She shrugs. "The boys by the fountain, they laughed, called me a tinker girl, said I'd die unmarried." You kneel beside her. Her hands are chapped. Her eyes glisten. "They called you what you are," you say. "But they don't understand what that means." She frowns. "It means I'll never wear ribbons." You untie the red ribbon from your spindle and place it in her hand. You already do. Brita ties it in her braid the next day. She walks through the town like it's hers. And when she returns, her smile is quiet but real. At the widow's circle, Ruth brings news. Her cousin from another town has arrived bearing silks and letters. Apparently, a wealthy merchant's widow there has opened a school for girls, not nobles, not convents, just girls, learning sums, reading scripture, mending books. They call her eccentric, Ruth says, but they keep sending daughters. The room buzzes with cautious wonder. Maud leans back. "Think they'd let us send one?" "You mean Brita," you ask. "She's yours, isn't she?" You glance toward the window, where the forge glows faintly. "She's hers," you say, "but I'd ask her." Brita listens to the idea, nodding slowly. She doesn't smile right away. Then she says, "Only if I can come back after." You laugh. "Of course. Who else will burn the hinges if I'm not watching?" She grins. "Or fix them after you do." You both laugh. It echoes through the workshop, like bells not mourning this time, but something brighter. As Brita prepares for her journey short, just a week, maybe two, you begin to notice the silence again. Not the silence of grief, the silence of space. You'd grown used to her chatter, her humming, her footsteps. But now, you hear the wind more clearly, the creak of the door, the way the fire pops without apology. You sit by yourself and wonder, is this what peace feels like? In the town square, a new widow appears. Her name is Marin, young, pale, eyes like storm glass. Her husband died in the mines. She carries herself like a branch, unsure whether it has snapped or bent. You bring her bread. She stares at it. I don't know what to do next, she says. You nod. You're not supposed to. That's how they keep you small. She says nothing, but her eyes begin to thaw. I'll walk with you tomorrow, you offer. To the well. To the church. To the weavers. Why, she asks. Because I remember when no one did. The next day, you do exactly that. And the day after, she doesn't say much. But she starts to hum. The same melody Brita used to hum. You smile. One thread at a time. That week, you receive a letter. From Brita. The handwriting is clumsy but proud. She describes the school. The strange tastes of stew in another town. The questions the other girls ask. The way the priest there raised his brow when she said, I fix things. She ends with, I miss the smell of ash. You laugh out loud alone. Then the steward arrives again, this time without clerks, just him. He inspects nothing. He says little until he clears his throat. There's talk of new ordinances, restrictions. You look up sharply. On women, on guild permissions. Remarried widows may lose primary trade rights. You pause. But I'm not remarried. He meets your eyes. They think you will be. You let that hang, then say, is that your concern? He rubs his beard. No, it's theirs. You say slowly, tell them I'll write my will before I write a vow. He almost smiles. You may need both. You walk him out. And on the way back, you stop at the graveyard. You haven't visited in weeks. The stone is cold beneath your hand. You whisper, you were good, but not all of me was yours. And the wind responds. It always does. At the forge, you light the coals again. Alone. The sound is familiar. The solitude less lonely. You work late. Not because you must, but because the rhythm pleases you. You set aside a half-made clasp. The tools hum quietly. The room smells of heat and hope. Outside, the frost thickens. But inside you burn steady. That night, the dream returns. Not a memory. Not grief. You are walking through the market. A girl follows. A woman walks beside. One hands you a spindle, another a blade. You keep both. You keep walking. Snow comes softly in the early hours, dusting the rooftops and creeping into the cracks of the stone paths like powdered chalk. The town muffles itself in white. Footsteps vanish quickly behind you as you walk to the forge, the cold biting, but not cruel. Inside, the hearth is stubborn. It takes longer to catch. You kneel with flint and breath, coaxing flame from smoke until the first tongue of fire flickers and stays. You whisper, good to no one, then sit beside it to warm your hands. Brita isn't due back for 2 more days. You glance at the empty corner where her coat usually hangs, and for a moment, you feel something stretch inside you. A space that's neither grief nor longing, but a strange mix of both. Later, you pull out the clasp she wrote about. A girl at the school admired it, she said. Wanted one like it. You run your thumb over the unfinished edge and decide to make another better. Sharper. With your maker's mark etched inside the curve, you hum while you work. It's Brita's tune now. Midway through your shaping, there's a knock at the front. When you open the door, it's not who you expect. It's Lonnie, but she doesn't look herself. Her shoulders are tight. Her eyes dart once over each shoulder before meeting yours. You open the door wider. Come in. She does, wrapping her arms around her chest. The heat of the forge hits her cheeks, and she exhales as if finally breathing after hours underwater. They've summoned me. You blink. Who? The magistrate. There's been a complaint. You move closer. About what? They say I've been giving advice to girls, interfering in marriage contracts. One man claims I cost him a dowry match. Your voice drops. And did you? I told the girl she could ask for a better offer. That was all. You nod. That's enough sometimes. You both sit in silence. Then Lonnie chuckles bitterly. Imagine being accused of teaching a girl to ask questions. What a sin. You pour tea. Strong and slightly bitter, like everything worth having. You'll have support, you say. We'll write a letter with names. She looks up, startled. You'd sign it? I'll carry it, you reply. In medieval towns, women could be accused of meddling simply for sharing wisdom. Midwives, widows, weavers, all vulnerable to whispers of witchcraft or improper influence. Historians still argue whether these charges were tools of control or reactions to real resistance. Likely both. But you've learned something. Sometimes, the only way to silence the whisper is to speak louder. You gather signatures that night. Alice, Maud, even Marin, who barely speaks, presses her name into the page with shaking hands. By morning, the letter is sealed, and Lonnie stands straighter. You walk with her to the magistrate's house. Not behind her, beside her. The streets are watching, of course. The church bells toll once, but no one speaks. You hand the letter to the clerk. He takes it wordlessly. Lonnie thanks you. Her voice is low, steady. Do you think they'll stop? You pause. No. But they'll wait. She smiles. That's enough. Back home, the forge waits. So does a surprise. Brita, standing in the doorway. You blink. You're early. She grins. I miss the smoke. You pull her into a hug before you remember how long it's been since you let anyone that close. She smells of books, parchment, unfamiliar soup spices. I brought back something, she says, digging into her satchel. She pulls out a small bundle paper wrapped in string. Inside, a painted tile, slightly chipped. But on it, a woman with a hammer in one hand and a spindle in the other. A tiny red ribbon in her braid. They said it looked like you, she says. You touch the tile. You hang it over the hearth. It belongs there. Winter presses in harder now, but your days remain full. Customers trickle steadily, drawn, not by pity, but reliability. Brita learns to temper metal without help. Marin joins the circle and begins to speak. Slowly, hesitantly, but real. And Lonnie. Lonnie returns from the magistrate with a verdict. Unsubstantiated, they ruled. No fault found. You throw a feast. Simple. Bread, soup, warm wine, but laughter fills the air. You dance. A little. Just enough. That night, after the last bowl is washed and the candles burn low, Brita asks, do you ever miss being married? You stir the embers. Then say, I miss the parts I made myself believe I loved. She nods. Then asks, would you do it again? You answer with a long silence. Then, I'd marry if it felt like walking forward, not back. Brita stares at the fire. Then I hope I'm brave enough to wait for that. You smile. You already are. The snow deepens. It seals the town in quiet. You look outside and see your footprints fading behind you. And for once, you don't rush to preserve them. Because forward now matters more. You wake to a strange quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that weighs too much. That clings to the air like damp wool. Outside, the snow is thicker than before, and the usual sounds of carts, roosters, and bells are missing. The street has turned to white stillness, and the sky hangs low, like it hasn't breathed in days. You light the forge anyway. Some morning's ritual is all that stands between you and doubt. Brita joins you late, red-cheeked and winded. She's holding a folded note sealed with rough wax. You take it with a nod and crack it open over the anvil. It's from the guild, an invitation, but not the kind you'd expect. They're holding a gathering, a formal one. Midwinter audit. Every listed tradesperson must attend, including, for the first time, widows with declared apprenticeships. You read that line twice. Brita whistles low. That's you. You nod, eyes still on the paper. And then she asks, is it safe? You hesitate, because that's the right question. In medieval towns, a woman's presence in a guild hall wasn't forbidden, but it wasn't welcome either. especially not when she came alone, or came loud, or came with a ledger instead of a husband. Historians still debate how many women truly held guilds standing versus how many names were simply left behind by husbands. But sometimes, a name written in ink becomes harder to erase than expected. You fold the letter. We'll go, you say. Not I. We. Brita grins. Then I need to borrow a better tunic. You spend the next day preparing. Not your words, you already know what to say, but your presentation. You choose a shawl that isn't black, but deep plum. It catches the firelight. You polish your boots. You even pin your hair slightly differently, tighter higher, like a crown you made yourself. Brita does the same. Her braid is neat, her eyes sharp. You walk to the hall together. It's colder than you remember. The stone corridor echoes every footstep. The wooden doors creak open with a groan that sounds like hesitation. Inside the room is lined with long benches, low fires, and faces that tilt to inspect, to judge, to weigh. You're the only woman standing. Brita stands behind you, her hands tight in front of her. You wait. They speak your name. You step forward. A steward reads your record aloud. Forge number 12. Independent production confirmed. Apprentice registered. Output steady. Then comes the question as expected. Will you be renewing your claim as widow or declaring intent to remarry? You smile just slightly. Neither. You say, I'll renew as master. A pause, then whispers, then a voice older, sharper. That's not the custom. You look at him and answer gently. Custom does not equal law. And if the forge has met every test but gender, then your argument isn't with my fire, but with your fear. Silence. Even Brita blinks. Then another voice from the side, soft, resigned, familiar. It's the younger steward, the one who always watches instead of speaks. He clears his throat. The claim stands. It's in order, just like that. The room breathes again. You nod once, then turn and walk out. The cold feels less bitter now. Brita bumps your shoulder. You didn't stammer. I saved that for later. Back at the workshop, you stoke the forge high. Not for need, for celebration. Brita brings bread from Alice. Ruth stops by with a flask of something sweet. Even Marin knocks on the window with a shy smile and a pot of stew. You don't host a feast, but you do open the door, and they gather. Not because they must, because they want to. Later, as the fire burns low, Brita asks, what happens next? You lean back in your chair. We keep going, even if they hate it, especially then. She grins. You should write a book. You raise an eyebrow. Who'd read it? She shrugs. Girls like me. You nod. Then maybe I already am. That night, alone again, you sit with the ledger open on your lap. You flip through pages of numbers, names, tools, repaired contracts, fulfilled. And then at the end, you turn to a blank sheet. You don't write anything. You just stare at the space. A space no longer waiting to be filled, but waiting to be used. In the firelight, your hands look older, but steadier, more yours than ever. You think of your husband, his laugh, his hammer the first time he called you clever. You whisper, you'd like her, the girl. The fire pops. You smile. Not that she'd need your approval. And upstairs, the old mourning veil still sits folded in a chest. But it's not lonely anymore. It has company now. The tile, the spindle, the clasp Brita made and bent too far. Tokens of a life built not from what was lost, but what was made after. The days lengthen, not by much, just a breath more light at the end of each afternoon. The snow recedes in patches, revealing cobblestones, dead grass, and shoe prints where none should be. Spring is not here yet, but it has started whispering, and you hear it. You're mending a set of hinges when a soft knock pulls you from your rhythm. Marin enters, holding a wrapped bundle. Her fingers fidget with the cloth. I want to learn, she says. You set your tools down slowly. To work iron. She nods. You study her face. She's still pale, still speaks like her voice isn't quite hers. But there's a fire beneath it now, small but bright. Why, you ask? She looks down at the bundle. Because I'm tired of asking for things. You nod. Then you're ready. Brita watches from the side, arms crossed, and a quiet grin on her face. Later, when you ask if she minds sharing the space, she shrugs. You gave it to me when I didn't know how to ask. You remember that first day. The nervous knock, the burned palm, the soft vow to return. And now, she stands with the stance of someone who knows the shape of herself. It's the best thing you've ever made. Marin's first day is messy. She drops tongs, overheats a rivet, burns her sleeve. But she doesn't leave. Not when Brita snorts and says, "You'll get it." Not when you gently reposition her hands. Not even when the ash makes her cough. "I'm staying," she says that night, breathless but certain. You believe her. As the forge grows busier, the town begins to change around you. Not in grand ways, but in sideways glances softening, in women stopping at your stall to ask about tools, in boys who no longer jeer at Brita, but ask for help with carts and nails, and in the way the priest nods at you without blinking now. Even Father Harwin, the old one, passes by once on market day. He doesn't speak, but he doesn't frown either. That's enough. One morning, Alice visits with parchment. "I'm writing my will," she says. You smile. Feeling mortal, feeling wise, she corrects. She wants to leave her spice tools to Lonnie, her stool to Maud, and a portion of her stall to Marin if the girl keeps training. "I want something to last after me," she murmurs. You understand. So you help her write it. Slowly, carefully, as the fire crackles beside you both. Later, Brita brings you a gift. It's small, wrapped in linen, inside a clasp. You blink. It's your mark etched inside the curl. "But I didn't." She shrugs. "I made it from your sketch. Thought you should have something no one else does." You hold it in your palm, warm despite the cold. You say thank you, but what you mean is, "I see you. I trust you. I am proud of you." And she hears it all. At the widow's circle, someone suggests a formal name. "For the record books," Maud says. "We've been too quiet too long. Ideas are tossed like kindling. The sisterhood, no, the flame circle, too poetic." Then Ruth laughs. "We're just widows who stayed." And that somehow feels truer than anything. So they call it the staying circle. You raise your mug to it. Brita raises hers, and Marin, still shy, lifts hers too. In some parts of Europe, widows could form informal networks, managing land and labor without direct oversight. These were never written down, but they endured hand to hand, home to home. Historians still argue whether these alliances shaped real power. But here, you know the answer. It's in the way Marin mends a blade without fear. It's in Brita's handwriting now, neat enough to keep the ledgers. It's in your name carved into the wood above the door, without apology. One day, while tidying the back room, you find an old chest, one you haven't opened in years. Inside, your wedding dress, yellowed, stiff. You lay it out, smooth the fabric. It smells like lavender and thyme. Brita walks in. "Oh," she says, "it's lovely." You nod. It was. She studies it. "Do you miss who you were then?" You pause, then answer. "I think I'm still becoming." She doesn't speak, but she stays near. That's enough. You fold the dress gently and place it back, not because you need it, but because you no longer fear it. That night, you hang a new sign beside the forge door. Nothing grand, just a word. Staying, not Carter, not widow. Just that. Staying, because you did, because you are, because now others will too. The forge glows as the snow melts. Not loud, not proud, but steady. And tomorrow, when the town wakes, it will wake to women working, not waiting. Spring comes late, but certain. It tiptoes into town, like a child testing cold water. Cautious at first, then laughing once it's in. The snow melts in rivulets along the cobbles, and the earth softens. The wind still bites now and then, but the sun no longer flinches behind the clouds. You find yourself stepping outside earlier each morning, not to check for damage, but simply to feel the light. The forge breathes easier too. Iron seems to bend more kindly in the warmth. You open the shutters wider now, letting the scent of pine and ash roll freely into the street. Children pass and wave. You wave back. No one crosses to the other side of the street anymore. Marin's hands are stronger. She no longer winces at the hammer's weight. Her sleeves are scorched, her cheeks smudged, and her posture has straightened. There's pride in her now, not loud, but permanent. Brita, ever watchful, has started teaching her in small moments, adjusting grip, reminding her to mind the heat. You say nothing, but each time you see it, you feel the strange sting of joy and distance. They don't need you every second anymore, and that means you did your job well. One morning, you send them both to the market with a list, not because you're busy, because you want to watch them leave and return. Because watching others grow roots where you once saw only frost is its own kind of miracle. You sip tea by the window until they return laughing, balancing bolts of cloth and a crooked basket of nails. Brita haggled like a knight, Marin says proudly. You smile. I never doubted it. That evening, a knock comes at your door. An unfamiliar man. Middle-aged, cloaked, clean-shaven. Respectable enough to make you suspicious. He bows his head. Widow Carter. You nod. My name is Tom Dyer. My brother once trained under your husband. Before the war. He passed last spring. You gesture him in. He hesitates. He left a tool chest. Said it was never his, just borrowed. Said you'd know what to do with it. Your heart skips once. Did he mention what was inside? Tom nods. Only that it belonged to someone before him. And someone after. The chest is heavy. Oak iron bound with initials burned into the lid. Not yours, not your husband's. Older still. You open it alone after dusk. Inside, a hammer, the handle worn smooth. A spindle, wrapped in faded blue thread. A veil, gray folded. A slip of parchment. Not all legacies are loud. You run your hands over each item. They feel familiar. Not in memory, in meaning. Like pieces of a pattern too big for one life. You place the chest in the workshop, not in a corner, on a shelf. Visible. You tell Brita and Marin what it is. They don't ask for permission to open it. They simply understand. At the staying circle, the talk turns serious. A new edict is rumored, one that could limit women from signing business ledgers without a male witness. It hasn't passed, but its breath is near. Alice folds her arms. They're scared. Ruth nods. They should be. You stay quiet for a long time. Then say, we'll write again. Not just letters this time. Stories, records, testimonies, so they can't claim they didn't know. So girls one day will read about how you stayed. Brita begins the first page. You watch her write. We are not waiting. We are building. You don't correct her. You wouldn't dare. Marin carves her first solo hinge. It's imperfect. Too sharp on one edge. But when she holds it up in the light, her smile makes it perfect anyway. You whisper to her, keep one for yourself. She looks puzzled. Why? You tap your chest. To remember who did it first. The town holds a feast for the thaw. You're invited. You go, not to prove anything. Just to walk the square and see what's changed. And what hasn't. A child tugs your sleeve. Are you the fire lady? You grin. Only when it's cold. She giggles and runs off. That night, you add a second sign below the one that reads, staying. This one is smaller. It reads, forged by many hands. Because you know now, what begins with mourning can end in mastery. What begins with silence can return as song. And what begins with you can continue far beyond your name. At the hearth, Brita hands you her latest clasp. This one bears your initials. Not because you told her to, but because she wanted to. You hold it close to the light, then to your heart. And the warmth you feel isn't from the forge. It's from everything you once thought would break you, now standing unburned. The forge doesn't stop. Though spring rush turns into summer calm, and the air grows thick with pollen and the sweat of work. Still, every day, the coals are lit, the tools laid out, and the shop opens as surely as the sun rises. Your rhythm has changed, though. You wake without urgency now. The pressure you once felt, that clawing need to prove to survive, to hold your ground, is softer. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Because now, when someone doubts, you don't explain. You demonstrate, and they learn. Brita teaches more often now. Not just Marin, but others, young girls from the weaving house, one curious boy from the baker's row. She holds a quiet command that surprises even her. You step back often, letting her take the front. She doesn't notice that you're giving her space. She just fills it naturally. That's how you know she's ready. One afternoon, while sorting scrap metal, Marin finds something wedged deep in the bottom of the old parts barrel. A ring, iron thin and warped from time. The kind that might have once been pressed into a hand at a quiet altar with no feast, no song. Only the smell of oil and ash. You hold it up to the light. Brita asks yours. You shake your head. No. Older. She tilts her head. Want to keep it. You smile. We'll hang it above the door. Let it rust there. Marin smirks. A different kind of welcome. Or a warning, you reply. That evening, you walk the fields beyond the town. Alone. You trace the familiar paths, the orchard wall, the stone marker where you once sat after the funeral, knees tucked to your chest like a girl lost in her own body. You sit again now, not lost, not hollow, just quiet. A bird calls nearby. The wind is soft. The smell of summer coming clings to everything, and you think of all the things they said you couldn't do. Couldn't keep the forge, couldn't resist remarriage, couldn't teach, couldn't change the town, couldn't matter not alone. You smile. Not to be smug, just to remember, because you did all of that, and none of it alone. The next morning, a woman arrives from another town. She's tall, thin, veiled though not in black. She's heard rumors of a forge run by women of a place where questions aren't punished, where silence is optional. You offer her tea before asking anything. She looks around, eyes catching on the chest, the hammer rack, the chalkboard with names and marks. She says, "My sister just buried her husband. She can't stay where she is. They want her to marry the landlord's son." You nod. The woman hesitates. Is this a place she could learn? You think of Brita, of Marin, of the spindle, the veil, the clasp, the tile. You say, if she's willing to work, she's welcome. Later you sweep the doorway. The iron ring above it catches the light, casting a soft shadow on the threshold. You trace that shadow with your toe. Not a line drawn to keep people out. A circle to bring them in. That night, Brita and Marin bake bread over the coals. It's not good, too dry, a little burnt. But they laugh so hard, you nearly choke on yours just watching them. This is why we don't do everything ourselves, Brita says. You grin. Speak for yourself. I make excellent stew. Lies, Marin mutters full-mouthed. You let them win. Tonight, Alice arrives later with her will finalized. She hands you a copy. Your executor, she says. You blink. Why me? You already know how to handle fire. You fold the paper carefully. You don't say thank you. She wouldn't want you to. Instead, you say, you'll outlive us all. She smirks. Still picked you. That night a storm rolls in. The forge is closed. The shutters drawn. The coals banked low. You sit by candlelight, writing in the circle's record book. You write. 3 girls came through our doors this spring. 1 left healed. 1 stayed. 1 has not yet arrived. Then we no longer whisper. We no longer knock. Then finally, we stay. And the fire stays with us. You close the book and watch the storm. It rattles the windows, but you don't move. It booms and breaks, but you don't bow, because this time the storm isn't inside you. You've outlasted it. And if another comes, you'll teach someone how to stand through it, just as someone once taught you. The summer brings dust and gold. The roads dry out, the trees bloom too fast, and the forge fills with the hum of bees that sneak through cracks just to investigate. You let them stay unless they sting. That's your rule for most things now. Brita keeps her braid high, her tools sharp. She runs the forge 3 mornings a week now alone. You pretend to fuss. She pretends to ask your permission. It's a little play you both perform the way dancers circle each other to show respect before a duel. Marin laughs at both of you. She's already better than you were at her age, she says one day. You smirk. Yes, but I had worse teachers. Brita throws a scrap of cloth at you. It's clean. She's careful now not to waste good rags. One day a letter arrives. Unusual parchment, green-tinted wax. It's from the town steward's office, but it's not a summons. It's an invitation to a council for tradeswomen and independent widows. You stare at the seal for a long time before opening it. Inside, a request for your presence, your opinion, your example. You sit down, not from shock, from the weight of being heard. You go. The hall is smaller than the guild chambers, less grand, but the windows are open. The chairs are arranged in a circle. No podium, just people. You count 4 other women like you, 3 older. One so young you wonder if she's pretending. The steward nods when you enter. Others nod too. They speak of market taxes, firewood costs, apprenticeships. They ask for your experience. And when you speak, no one interrupts. No one finishes your sentence. No one asks if you're remarried yet. Outside, afterward, you find a bench in the shade and sit. The market bustles in front of you. Someone plays a pipe near the well. 2 children chase each other around a barrel. The air smells of horses and flowers. You're not thinking, not planning, just being. That's new. You've earned it. Back at the forge, Brita is bandaging Marin's thumb. Caught it on the hinge, Marin mutters. Brita sighs. You still swing wide. They don't see you at first. You stand in the doorway, listening, smiling. Later that night, Brita asks, do you ever think about leaving? You tilt your head. The forge? No. The town. Just going. You sit with the question, not to dismiss it, to taste it. Yes, you say finally, sometimes. And if you did, I'd build another forge. She nods. I think I might too. Someday. You nod back. Then I'll help you light the first fire. That evening, Lonnie brings news. A girl from the weaver's house wants to learn to read contracts. Alice says she'll teach her. Ruth says she'll provide ink. You suggest adding a ledger to the forge, so the girls can learn to write their own names in more than ash. And then quietly, without ceremony, a month passes. And Brita tells you, I've been offered a place in another town. A workshop, a chance. You nod. You do not smile. You do not cry. You do say, you should take it. She leans in. I'll come back. I swear. You reply, don't swear. Just send word. She does. She leaves with her tools in a bag tied in red ribbon. She leaves with Marin, hugging her too tight. She leaves you with silence, but not the kind that hurts, the kind that echoes. You run the forge alone for a while. You teach Marin more. You drink tea more slowly. You remember to sit by the door at dusk, to breathe the cooling air, to hum the tune Brita used to hum, to feel the fire for what it is now. Not your burden, but your companion. One morning, a girl appears, wide-eyed, dusty, holding a bent nail and a broken buckle. She says they said you can teach. You look at her hands, soft, but willing. You say I can. And just like that, it begins again. You hang a new clasp beside the forge. This one is Brita's, the best she ever made. Not for sale, for memory, for proof, for the next girl. And that night, with the forge banked and the moon high, you write one more line in the Staying Circle's record book. There is no end. Only another name, another spark, another woman ready to strike. The forge is quiet tonight. The coals burn low just enough to cast a soft orange glow across the stone floor. Shadows stretch gently along the walls, familiar companions now not threats. You sit in your old chair, back straight, hands resting calmly in your lap. It's been a long road, not a straight one, not a loud one, but yours. From the first cold morning after the burial, when the veil weighed heavier than your grief, to the day you drew your initial on the sign. From the moment Brita asked to learn to the hour, Marin carved her first hinge without flinching. From laughter in the workshop to quiet nights writing records that no one had ever asked for, but you wrote anyway, because someone someday might need them. And because they are yours to tell. The town has changed subtly, but surely. There are still rules, still whispers, still men who measure your worth by your surname. But there's also something else now, space. Space that didn't exist before. Space you cracked open with fire and refusal. There are girls who carry hammers now. Girls who speak their own names at the market stall. Girls who look at you and don't see a warning. They see a future. At the staying circle, they tell stories like you once listened to. Of widows who said no. Of weavers who taught secrets. Of girls who left and came back with new tools in their belts. They speak your name now. Not reverently, not with fear, with belonging, because you didn't climb above them, you stood among them. And that in the end was the quiet revolution. You walk through the forge one last time tonight before sleep. Your hand traces the wooden bench where Brita once sketched her first clasp. The window where Marin burned her sleeve. The chest with the old veil still folded. The spindle wrapped in red ribbon. The hammer with someone else's thumbprint in the handle. None of it forgotten, all of it used. You step outside. The night air is cool, clean. The stars blink above the rooftops, steady and familiar. The town rests, but you don't feel small beneath it. You feel full. You take your seat beneath the iron ring hung above the door. That little rusted circle, born of hands long before yours. It swings slightly in the breeze. You lean back. Close your eyes. Let the hum of memory carry you, and you think, Brita is teaching now. Marin is mentoring a girl of her own. The ledgers are filling with names that were never meant to be written. The forge still burns, and in that warmth, you feel them all. The women before you, the ones beside you, the ones to come. A lineage of fire passed hand to hand without permission. Just because. Thank you truly for joining me through every emotion, every turn, every moment of this journey. It's been an adventure, and I'm grateful to share it with you. As we close this tale, I wish you a peaceful evening. May you have a restful night, deep sleep, and dreams filled with wonder and light. Rest well, you've earned it. And when you're ready for the next story, I'll be here waiting to journey with you again. Before you go, if you love this tale, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what moved you, surprised you, or lingers with you long after the story ends. Until we meet again, good night, and see you in the next adventure.